Welcome, everyone, to Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, a.k.a. Wolf, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
Sal.
Sal.
Here with you guys, and I'm glad to be here.
The man they call Sal.
That's it.
Who still has not changed his name.
It's Sal Recian.
You will.
It's growing on me day by day, minute by minute.
He's thinking about it.
Yeah, it's growing on me.
Yeah. Folks, that's an ongoing joke. We've actually gotten some emails about that. People telling me to leave you alone, that was your birth name, and that I should stop.
Sal Recian. Yeah.
No, well, Sal Recian, but they're telling me that you really don't want to be called that. And I'm like, wow, it's a joke, folks. Everybody's so serious about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Today, though, we wanted to do something special today. This is a Mother's Day episode.
Yeah, I think, this is appropriate.
Everybody has a mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody gave birth to you.
Yeah.
Or you were hatched by a being that left you in an egg.
But there was a mother, there was a mother figure there too,
Yeah.
For those that don't get along with their mothers, there's always a mom figure there.
There's some sort of mom.
Yeah.
Somebody gave birth to you. Today is going to be a Mother's Day episode, and we're going to have a special guest that's going to come on, and she's going to talk about her mother. And it's a very touching story. And folks, before we get any further, though, we're going to drop the email.
Oh, yes.
DasWolfman88@gmail.com. DasWolfman88@gmail.com. Give us your stories.
Or wolfandsal@gmail.com. wolfandsal@gmail.com.
Gmail.com.
You choose whichever one you want.
Or we will give you Armando's personal home phone number along with, I'm just kidding.
555.
So, folks, we want to get right into this. We have a special guest with us. Her name is Catherine. Do you want to say hello, Catherine?
Hello.
Hi.
Awesome. She's here with us.
She's here with us. She had an encounter, I guess you could call it.
I would say an extraordinary event.
Yeah. An extraordinary event, yes.
Yeah,
but she had an encounter with a very not nice individual, and that's where we get into the story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
You can be as detailed as you want, or whatever you choose.
Okay. I'm 42. Live in Michigan. This incident happened in Florida when I was 22. So
20
that's
years
probably
ago.
as far as I want to go with. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. That's perfectly fine. So this incident that happened to you was 20 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. It was probably 6 months after my mom passed away. So
do you want to get started? Just let us
okay.
Tell the audience.
Okay. I worked for a national pharmacy chain. There was a man there that made it his, I guess, the women there, his conquest. Everyone that he thought he could get with, he tried. And I guess I was on his list. He would offer to buy me stuff, and I'd be like, no, I don't need anything. He ended up, I got left work one day. I got in my vehicle. I saw him waiting in his Jeep, and I thought, oh, that's odd, because he had gotten off like a half an hour before that, and thought it was odd that he was sitting out in his vehicle for so long. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe he's meeting somebody. I left. I lived approximately a mile away from my work. And going down the road a bit, I noticed in my rearview mirror that he was like 2 or 3 vehicles back. And I thought, well, that's odd. I didn't ever notice him taking this way home because there was a main highway that my work was on, that typically, if you would only take this road that I was on, typically if you lived in one of the closer neighborhoods off of that street. So I thought it was odd, but I said maybe he takes this way home. So I just kept on going, and I pulled up into my parking lot. I lived in a triplex where the side of the building is actually what faced the street, and mine was that end unit that was right facing the road. And he pulled in a few minutes after me, and well, not even like 30 seconds. And I got out of my vehicle and I asked him what he was doing there, and he said that he asked me to use my bathroom. And I said, well, you should turn around and go use Work's bathroom. It's right down the road. And he said, I really have to go. And I was nervous. I was making up excuses. Like I told him, my mom always told me I needed to have a clean house, in order to have company over. And my apartment's a mess, which was a lie. I just didn't want him in my home. And he's like, well, go take a few minutes and clean up. So I had literally gotten to my apartment, locked both my locks, and sat on my couch. And, I was going through my mind, like, why is he at my house? Why didn't he just, if he really had to use the restroom, why wouldn't he just have gone there? And you have to understand, I was 22. My dad was a first gunner's mate in the Navy, very protective. I lived a very sheltered life, so it was very naive and gullible. So I was just going through my head, like, he's a pharmacy manager. He's not going to do anything. He just let the man, give him the benefit of the doubt and let him use your bathroom. The other issue is that my bathroom, it was a 1-bedroom apartment. When you walk into my door, you're walking into the living room, and then there's the kitchen's off straight ahead from that. But if my bedroom's off to the right, and then the bathroom is off to the back left-hand corner of the bedroom. So he had come up to my front door and started banging on it. And I thought, well, you know what? Just let him in, get him in, get him out, and be done with it. What's he going to do? You work with him. So I let him in, showed him where the bathroom was, and had gone back out in the living room. Well, when he had walked out, I had a blue crown conure that had picked up the habit of sounded just like my dog when he would bark. So he actually got scared my butt.
Catherine,
Sorry.
I'm sorry for explain to us what that is, because I know what that is, but Sal, I don't think you know what that is.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Please, please
explain to us what that is.
They're like little parrots. They're bigger than. Have you ever seen a Quaker parrot?
No.
I've seen lots of parrots. I couldn't tell you what breed or type they are, but I've seen lots of them.
They're bigger. They're like a small parrot. They talk. I hand raised them from a baby. I literally got him when he was ugly with like very few feathers on him, and hand fed him with like a little baby syringe.
Nice. Okay,
yeah,
so you have this conure, this parrot, and tends to bark and sound like your dog.
Sounds like a dog.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which that kind of should have told me something when because he literally. My bed was facing that far back wall, like the headboard was on the far back wall. If you're facing it, I had like a big nightstand that his cage was on. And so he was in between the bed and the bathroom, basically, the bathroom doorway. And when my bird started barking, he ran, like he screamed and ran out and came into the living room. He was like, where's your dog is trying to bite me? And I'm like, I don't have a dog. That's my bird. Oh, it's a bird. Can you show me your bird? And, I'm an animal lover. I'm proud of my animals. They're my kids basically. So I got happy about that. But I didn't realize he's in my bedroom. That's right next to my bed. I didn't realize that he was using that as, a ploy to get me towards my bed. And I had bent down to open up the cage door and get the bird out, and he went to throw me on my bed. I managed to get away from him, and I ran out to my front door. He got me at the front door and had started undoing his pants and had grabbed my hand and put it on his junk. I don't know what else to call it. I need to explain something. The last Christmas my mom was alive, my favorite animal's always been a wolf, and she had gotten me a touch lamp that has the top of it has like a wolf and a bald eagle and a dream catcher in the background. And I've heard people say that, oh, touch lamps, they'll go on and off in a storm or whatever. It was a clear day, clear sunny day. This lamp, I never had problems with it. Still to this day, I've never had problems with it going on and off by itself. And until this, when he had me, my back was up against the wall, the front door, and he had his pants open and my hand he had put my hand on his stuff. It was the weirdest thing. There was like we heard a pop, and then that light, it just started going on and off, on and off, and on and off. And I was in the process. I was telling him to get out, and that light going off, and I could smell my mom's perfume. She always wore Jovan Musk, and I could smell her perfume, and I knew it was her. I saw that light going on and off, and it gave me strength too. And I'm like, you need to get out, and you need to get out now. And I turned around, I got my door open, and he walked out. But his face, I mean, he was terrified of it. I knew that was my mom. I could smell her perfume. I never had problems with that lamp, and I know for sure that if she hadn't have been there watching out for me, that I would have been raped that day. I know for a fact I would have been. And I know it was her. I know she saved me.
Wow, that's extraordinary. It's amazing. Yeah, well, tense at the same time, and it's just wow. I'm at a loss for words, but there are reports out there of people having, being in a situation where it's very dangerous, potentially, life threatening, and having a loved one, or in other cases, angels come in and intervene and save them. And I personally think, just, from what you've told us, your story is extraordinary, but, mom was being mom.
It does happen.
Yeah. And mom was being mom. Even after she had passed, she still was looking over.
I believe that's what it was.
I think so too. I mean, smelling the perfume,
Mm-hmm.
and well, that brings up the question I just thought about. So your mom's perfume, you never wore her perfume or anything like that, did you?
No. I love my mother to the end of this earth. But you know the term old lady perfume. I love God, Mom, I love you, but Jovan Musk, to me that's an older woman's scent. And but she always had to smell like the mix of the perfume, Olay face moisturizer, and her CoverGirl makeup. It was like a combination. Everybody knows their mom's scent.
Yes.
It's something. Even 20 years later, I know my mom's smell. I can smell her on the holidays. I feel her hug me like every Christmas. Walking, going up to my dad's house for family Christmas. You smell her perfume, and you feel just this warm embrace. You feel somebody. You can feel her wrap herself around you. I'm a firm believer that they watch, your family watches out for you after after you go. And that saying, hell has no fury like a mother that protecting her children. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think she watches out for me daily.
Oh yeah.
I had a psychic friend of mine. She told me one time that and I believe this, that when people pass on, that they will continue to check on their loved ones. And every culture has a sort of belief, that there is an afterlife, that I don't think it's as cut and dry as you go up or down. I think that you may
Exactly.
eventually go up or down, but I think
I
that
think so.
there is an intermediate state, and I know that if there are loved ones left behind, in particular children, they can stay around as guardians. I know that when I was a kid, I used to play with another kid, and he had a very not nice stepmother, and he would always, and I stayed the night at his house a couple times, and him and his brother and his sister would always talk about their mother would come and tuck them in, and I never saw this, but I do remember like feeling like there was a female presence in the room at one point, and I kind of was half asleep, half awake, and that somebody was tucking him in, and kind of touched our hair, both of us. And of course, when I woke up the next day, the dad was there making breakfast, because I remember his dad was really cool. He was like the manager of Pizza Hut. I remember that he was really cool, and they always had pizza. But I just
Pizza,
remember
I love
him and like
pizza.
saying that his wife had gone to the neighboring town, and that she wasn't there. She was like in Cameron. This was in Rockdale.
Oh, okay.
And I remember him saying, because his stepmom wasn't even there. So I do vaguely remember, and I was like, whoa, what was that? But I never asked him. Like, I never bothered to ask. I just remember them talking about the mother like she was still around. It was very weird, but his stepmother was extraordinarily mean. I remember
A
that.
step monster, huh?
Yeah, his stepmom was very, very mean.
My stepmom, she knows my mom's around. When they had first got married, my mom everybody smells her perfume when she's around. I mean, my dad, my stepmom, my brothers, we all smell her perfume. But the rocking chair, there's a wooden rocking chair, and she used to. My mom, she had a personality, like she was everything to everyone that they needed at the time. Like her service was beautiful, but I was so overwhelmed with like how many people showed up and they said such good things about her. But it was good to see how people saw my mom as well. But I had an aunt that she used to love to. They used to, you know, joke around with each other. Well, she scared my aunt half to death. My aunt ended up running out of the house because she kept on feeling somebody like touch her shoulder, and she'd look, and she'd see that my dad and my stepmom weren't around her. And then she had actually went to go sit in that wooden rocker, and it started moving on her, and she actually ran out of the house screaming. But my dad and stepmom were laughing at her, and they thought it was hilarious that my mom was playing jokes with her even after she had passed.
That's amazing. And me personally, just these are my thoughts. I don't see what happened to you as really crazy. I'm right there with Wolf, with Josh. It's just the body, and my thoughts are is that the body is just a vessel. The soul is what lives and moves on to the next plane of existence, whatever that may be. Because truly, when you think about God, I'm of the opinion that God is all powerful. So when if you believe the same thing, then there's nothing that he can or cannot do. And so what you think God can do will only be limited by your imagination. Those are just my thoughts on it, because you either believe it absolutely that God is all powerful or you don't. So, that happening to you, your mom still being around. Oh yeah. I totally, it's being Hispanic, and there's, a lot of Hispanics have the family, cultural traditions that their loved ones don't ever really go away. They're always around. They're nearby to look out after you. And I think this is exactly what happened to you. Mom wasn't just going to leave you hanging.
Oh no. I know for a fact she watches me till this day. But some people, you tell some people some things, and they're so close minded, and they look at you like you're crazy. Or a lot of people expect when they hear about spirits and stuff, they automatically think of demons and evil.
Yeah,
And
everything's a demon. Yeah.
yeah, and I just know for a fact, like the way I was raised, that isn't true. I mean, I was brought up Protestant, but my mom literally, it was a morning routine. She'd ask me what I dreamt about the night before. Um, she told me that everyone in this world is born with different things, talents that they're good at, whether it be, they're good at sports, they're good at this. She said, but there's other people that, you know, they just get special gifts. And she said, a lot of us have these special gifts in our family. And, sometimes you call it a curse because you see things you don't want to see. Like I had one instant of remote viewing. I saw my brother get in a car accident, but it didn't make sense to me because he was driving my mom's vehicle and he had a Camaro. Well, little did I know that his car was broken down and he was driving her car that day. And I had jumped out. I hadn't left the house that day yet. And she's like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "I just had a dream that David got in an accident," because I didn't know what else to call it. I was 12 years old, I think. And she's like, "What do you mean he was in an accident?" And I said, he was driving your car and he got in an accident." And but that doesn't make any sense because he has his Camaro. She's like, "He's in my car now." And it wasn't, but I think 5 minutes later, my mom got the phone call that my brother was in a car accident. He was okay, but it's just different, I think there's some people that perpetually have, they're like a magnet for paranormal. And then you have the other people that if they haven't, if they have something paranormal happen to them, they try to block it out and write it off as something else. And, they don't want to, I don't know if it's just scared, they don't want to deal with it, or 100% they don't want to admit that they actually believe in it. Am I making sense with that?
Yeah, I think you're making perfect sense, Catherine. The whole idea of acknowledging loved ones still being around and, and intervening / protecting us, for a lot of people, that puts them out of their comfort zone. Because when you grow up, most people, I would say, let's just say people in general, are taught certain things as they grow up in a family, and so on and so forth. And, you can look at that and just call it for what it is. It's programming. If you're taught all your life that, let's say, unicorns, the way everybody understands unicorns, are real animals and that they're going to be there, you're going to believe that wholeheartedly until you come face to face with the reality that unicorns, as people see them and come to know them in general pop culture today, are not real. Well, that's going to be a big, thing that's going to create cognitive dissonance. The reality meeting with what they think reality is, and it's going to crash. And so,
Wait, whoa. Are you saying that unicorns aren't real?
well, not in the sense that pop culture makes them out to be today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but there are unicorns. They're called rhinoceroses.
I'm going to need a minute, guys.
They're called rhinoceroses. There are unicorns. They're rhinoceroses because they do have one horn. But anyways, yeah, it's just basically most people are afraid to step outside of their comfort zone and contemplate that which is chock full of questions and chock full of the unknown, if you will.
Well, our day-to-day lives are geared toward breaking us down. I mean, I really believe that. Like, you wake up, you pay bills, you go to work, you get, it's
the daily
it's the
routine.
Same, yeah, and I have a month, like it goes in monthly cycles, and
Yes.
for a while there I was on that hamster wheel of and I just got further and further away from my spirituality to the point where it was dumbed down to where nothing was really happening. I have had a lot of spiritual encounters in my life, things that have happened, and it doesn't surprise me at all that to hear that someone had something like what you had, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
I am appreciative, I guess, to say that there are things out there that protect us.
Oh, I
That
totally.
God, I believe,
I
allows them to come and protect us.
Oh, yes.
I have I had an encounter. I had a story that I wanted to share with you, Catherine. I got into it a little bit before you got on the air, but when it was 2013, I believe, I had a really bad flu, and that year the flu had actually it had killed people. I mean, it was killing people. And in this particular county, I know that there were people that had died, and so I ended up going to the hospital. I don't usually go to the hospital when I have the flu, but this was horrible. I mean, it was bad. And so I ended up going to the hospital and they admitted me. They were just like, yeah, they were not just going to let me go home. They were like, you're deathly ill. So they put me in the ICU and I was really, really sick. And then eventually, they started out and they just admitted me and then they moved me down to the ICU. I was really sick.
Wow. Yeah,
And
you're real sick.
Yeah, I was real
Nice.
sick. And then I heard the nurses at one point talking, they couldn't get my fever down and my blood pressure was just through the roof. And I remember hearing the nurses talking with one of the physicians and them saying that they were going to try to induce me, like to try to bring my blood pressure
Right.
down
Yeah.
because I was so ill and my fever was so bad I couldn't stay asleep. And
Oh,
it
man.
was a horrible illness. And I nearly died. And I remember it was close to Christmas. And so it was December 20th. I'll never forget I'd been in there for 4 days already. And I was not doing well. I was not getting better. And so I go to sleep, I guess of the 19th. And then it was December 20th, technically the night of December 19th. Anyways, I was laying in the bed, in the hospital bed, and I remember what I thought was my mother. I was so delirious, and I remember looking up and seeing what vaguely looked like my mother standing next to my bed and stroking my hair, and she was telling me, "Mijo, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay." She's like, "Today is not your time to go." And I was like, "Okay, Mom." And I was talking to her, and she kind of gently kissed my forehead, and then I woke up. Like it was like I closed my eyes and then automatically I opened them and it was morning. It was daytime and the fever was gone.
Oh,
And the
wow.
nurse comes in the room like almost immediately and she was like asking me to, she's like, "You ready to take your meds?" You know how they're being polite. And I was like, "Yeah." And I sat up and she's like, "Oh, we thought you were going to leave us at one point. Your fever was so high and nothing was working." And she said that your blood pressure was just really extremely high. And she was like, "You have high blood pressure anyway." And the fever was just really taxing your body. And my sheets were just drenched in sweat. It's like I had sweat like a gallon of
Like somebody poured a bucket of water on
yeah,
you.
it was crazy. And I was just like, she goes, "How do you feel?" I said, "I feel okay. I feel good." Like I felt fine. And then later that evening, like as the day went on, whatever, my fever never returned. The illness, it was gone. Like, it was just gone, and the doctor was like, he goes, "We went from thinking, you might die into you just being okay." It was and the doctor even said it was very odd. So, I asked my cousin that had showed up, I asked him, because he came, and I said, "Where's my mother?" Because I remember seeing who I thought was my mother at the side of my bed, and he was like, "Your mother?" And I was like, "Yeah, wasn't she here?" And he goes, "No, your mother wasn't here." He goes, I was asleep on the little pullout, He goes, "Tonight." And I didn't, nobody, there was nobody visited, just me. And
Oh,
so I thought
wow.
that was really weird. So I called my mom and she, of course, couldn't, they didn't really want people visiting. My cousin had already had this flu and had gotten over it. So he was the only one that could come see me. They didn't want anybody else coming because
Right,
there
'cause
were
of
a bunch of people
contagions
that
and
had the
stuff,
flu
yeah.
were on that wing. Yeah, and people were, like I said, people were dying. And so he told me, he's like, "Nobody's come." So I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I had this weird dream, and then while I was talking to her, it clicked in my mind like boom.
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, see, my mother resembles her a lot,
Ah.
like closely." And my grandmother died when I was 2, and she died on December 20th.
Oh.
And it
Oh,
was
wow.
December 20th. I looked at the calendar on my phone and I was like, "Oh my gosh, today's December 20th." And when I told my mother about this dream, my mother was like, "Oh my gosh," because my mother has felt the presence of her mother many times. She believes that she comes and sits on the foot of her bed.
Oh yeah.
She believed that, and I saw my abuelita on my mom's side
Mm-hmm.
when I was 7 years old. It was just very odd. I just remember I was at a friend's house and we were playing football, and you know how when you're when you when you're not the wealthy kids, you have to play with what you got. And we had this football that kept running out of air. And so my friend Terry was like, "Hey, go inside and one of y'all, and whoever, go inside and get the football." And so I ran in there to get the pump. He had the air pump. So, kids back then, for you youngsters that probably don't know anything about this, we had toy boxes. Everybody had a toy box, and Terry was no different. He had this blue one, wooden toy box, and that's where I kept my toys, was the toy box. And so anyways, I went in there to his toy box and I was digging for the pump, and I heard like a shuffling, like of feet. And I turn around and I see this Hispanic woman with glasses standing there in the doorway of his room going into the kitchen, because the kitchen went into his room. And I was like, "Who's that?" And she was looking at me. So I kind of turned back around and kept doing what I was doing. And then I looked back again and she was gone. Well, it really troubled me. And it was close to Christmas. This is when I was 7. And I talked to my mother about it. And like I said, I didn't really have hardly any memories of her because she died when I was 2. So then I told my mother about it and I said, "This is very weird thing happened to me, Mom." I was like, "This woman appeared to me," and I described her to my mother, and my mom began to cry. So then my mom pulls out a photo album, and I pointed to the person that I thought looked like, being a little kid, I just said, "That's her."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "That's my mother."
Wow.
And it clicked, like all of that just came flooding back to my frazzled mind,
After the fever?
After the fever, yeah. And I was just like, and then I literally grabbed my cousin by the arm and I was like, dude, that was my grandmother. I was like, she was here. I was like, that had to be her, And the date on the calendar, the day that I saw her when I was digging through the toy box, was December 20th. And then, of course, at the hospital, it was December 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the significance of that day is, that she passed away on that day. And of course, she passed away. She shouldn't have died the way she did. She had diabetes, and they were to take her leg or whatever, and I guess they just botched it,
Yeah, with diabetes, and if it's to the point they have to remove an appendage, you're talking gangrene, you're talking all kinds of stuff like that. And so,
well, it wasn't the way that this was, the way I understood it was, it wasn't supposed to have been. Right. They were taking a preemptive measure.
Right.
And they were, but the hospital that she had it done at, I'm not going to say it just wasn't,
wasn't the greatest.
Yeah, I'd heard a lot of bad things, but anyways, neither here nor there. But I don't want to get sued. But the bottom line is that that it should not have happened the way it did. And I remember I had like pneumonia or something as a little boy, and so I was in the hospital too when my grandmother was having her surgery. So if I remember correctly, it was some sort of, my mom's probably going to correct me and be like, "No, Mijo, you had something else," whatever. I was sick with something, and I remember that's why I was in the hospital, and so my mom was having to deal with that. And then, of course, while I'm in the hospital ill, they get the news that her mother died in surgery. But December 20th, for whatever reason, that's 2 times now that I've seen her. And so I do believe that people stay behind as guardian spirits. And I do believe I have my godson actually here with me in the studio. He's doing something on the computer, but he helps with the production of the show. And one of the things, his mother is what would you call your mom, Tony? A shaman? Like a
curandera?
A curandera kind of, but she's Vietnamese.
Right. So a Vietnamese version of
a Vietnamese,
curandera.
Yeah. And she'll do cleansings
a healer,
on people, like a healer, yeah. And one time she was on the phone with another lady from Vietnam, and she was talking in Vietnamese, and I'd never told my friend who was married to her at the time. I never told him. I never told Tony here. I never told his mother, any of these people, anything about my family. As far as, I had an uncle that died when he was 18. He was murdered.
Oh.
And to this day, they never did find who killed him. They have their suspicions, but they can't prove it, And so he was murdered, and the woman that was on the phone, she says this like just totally took me back. You know, she said, "You have an uncle who follows you, who protects you." And I've always wondered that because I've felt this male presence. I know that when my grandfather on my dad's side died, I could feel his presence sometimes too. But they told me this, and I was like, okay. And then I started thinking, I was like, oh my gosh. Then they even said that he shared my name. Well, my middle name is Paul, and his first name was Paul, and my middle name was named after him.
Oh.
So that was weird. Here's a person that's in Vietnam who is actually able to tell me these things. And she said he died very young. He was murdered. Like, how does this person know all these things? Like, that was weird. And so it kind of confirmed something that I had thought before, because I thought I had dreamed about, you know, I had never met him in life. He died, you know. But I did feel like he had, at some point, there had been a presence there, like that, like I was protected, you know, because I got into some situations and I felt like there was something that was there at one point. I'm not going to get into details, but I almost got hit. You know, I don't mean like punched, I mean shot.
Oh, wow.
And I felt like something kind of pulled my arm, and I felt like something told me, come here. And I turned to look. I didn't see it, but I got up from where I was at and I moved. And so, and it got hit like right there where I was at. And it was like, you know, I mean, it was serious. I could have been killed. And so I always wondered like what that was, you know, who that was or whatever. But then years later, and this was after I had gotten out of the hospital with the flu, then his mother was like, hey, I'm going to call this woman and she can do a reading on you or whatever, you know, and I wasn't really participating. I was like, yeah, go ahead, whatever. Honestly, didn't care, didn't believe it. I'll be honest. Right. And I just thought, yeah, okay, if it makes you feel better to do that, that's fine. But then when she started naming all these things about, you know, I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, I definitely believe that there are forces at work. You know, I've felt the presence of my grandfather, who was a big, large guy. He was a fighter. He was a very tough man, World War II vet, and just had a lot of like he was a very loud, big, large, strong man. You know, kind of like me,
kind of brash.
Very very much so. Had a lot of fight in him, and I remember that I used to go visit him every Wednesday when he was at you know, the VA's horrible. They don't do anything for you. They had him in the
right. They don't.
Well,
they don't.
yeah.
My dad was in Vietnam, and they don't take care of him at all. I feel so bad for our God, I can't even think of the word now. Our soldiers that are, yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I had a total brain fart right there.
It's okay.
It happens.
Yeah.
But I mean,
a little nervous.
Well, don't be nervous. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation. And
this is.
You told us an amazing story, and I want you to continue with the stories.
Oh, I got one that'll probably blow people's mind.
Oh.
It's probably hard to believe. I do have one question for you, Josh, before I forget. I wanted to ask you, with your near-death experience that you had, did you notice like an increase of paranormal around you after that? I mean, did you notice escalation after that? Did you feel like you're like a beacon more so than before?
I tell you this, I didn't really have like I just in near death, I guess, saying that I almost got blown to pieces, I guess you could say. That was
like when you were in the hospital, when your grandmother
Are you talking about that near death experience? Because because I've had several. I've been stabbed, and I nearly died from that too. And my brother and a lot of my friends that, they were there the night I got stabbed, and they've told Sal about it. And then I got roughed up because the cops thought I was attacking them because I fell on one of them. So yeah, I've had a few near death experiences. I'm pretty sure in a parallel reality, I've died several times. If we're doing the Rick and Morty thing, I'm like dead over and over again. But in this timeline, I'm still alive. Thank goodness. The Mandela effect has allowed me to stay alive.
Right. That's a topic that scares me to death.
Yeah.
I mean, I can handle spirits, demons. You get scared, but the Mandela effect, that terrifies me.
Well, because you have no control. It's like it's like we're at a video game that someone else is playing. That's how I feel. And you know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's like you go for a drive or something, and the road has changed. You know,
Yeah, well, I try to put it out of my mind and then try not to think about it. And then, when I'm just doing my life and everything, then something else happens, like driving on a main highway here. It just the road. I thought I missed my exit. I thought I was on the wrong high. It's a highway I travel every single day, and the curve. It wasn't the same road. It was not the same road. The sharp curve started way before it was. I had more curves, and it was going in the like it used to curve more to the right. Now the curves off to the left. It was mind blowing. I thought I was losing my marbles at that point. Um,
Well, Catherine, I'm of the mindset that, like I said earlier, my whole belief is that God is all powerful, and that's completely in an absolute fashion. So therefore, there's nothing that he cannot do, and he's not limited. So I think a lot of it, what goes along with those thoughts, is that he puts signs out there for us every day. And part of what we're supposed to do is pay attention to the signs, because it's not always going to be, for example, I guess, or for lack of better words, spoken to you and given to you in the most obvious manner. Some signs are subtle, some may be very obvious, but it's up to us to pay attention and look around, kind of like we talked about today. For Josh said, "Well, I've got we've got Catherine. She's coming on with this exciting story involving her mother." And then he tells me that, well, his mother called him as well, and so on and so forth. I'm like, well, there's signs right there. This is what we're supposed to be doing right
doing the
now.
Mother's Day show.
Yeah, and it's just part of God's plan. People expect these grandiose things every day from God, and it's not that way. You're going to get a lot more subtleties and things that you're supposed to be doing in accordance with God's plan. And, you're going to get that more than the big grandiose things. A lot of people fail to understand that. And so when you can acknowledge that you're going to get a lot more subtleties than grandiose things, your life's going to be better. And you're going to, you need to look around, pay attention, stop, smell the roses, all that good stuff, because every moment is a blessing.
People think that everything's supposed to be cinematic, and it's
Yeah,
not.
it's not. Yeah,
And
that's
let
a
me
good
tell you
word.
something else. The people think that that being about that life, about them gangster life, they don't know what it's like to almost bleed to death.
Yeah,
They don't know what it's like to be stabbed and shot at and stuff. It's not a pleasant, fun thing to be looking over your shoulder and wondering if the door's going to be kicked in. That's not a fun way
it's
to
not a way
live.
to
Believe
live.
me.
No.
no,
And
not at
so when
all.
you live that sort of horrible existence, and then you're just the abnormal becomes normal. I think a lot of that negativity that I carried around in that phase of my life contributed to my house being the way it was. I think there was a lot of that. Me and my guys, we were reminiscing the other night when we went downtown, and we were all talking and stuff. And I met up with a bunch of guys from the old days, and we were there and at a friend of mine's bar. And I as much as I miss the old days, I don't, because there was so much negativity around. I just don't want to live my life that way, and I think that invited a lot of darkness that was just already festering, that became, um, my grandfather gave me a warning before he died. Like, literally, I would go see him every Wednesday at the VA. There was
Was it a
the
home?
rest home, yeah, but
Yeah.
for the VA,
The
sponsored
veterans
by the
home.
VA, yeah, in Temple.
Yes.
And I would go visit him, and of course it was horrible there. And I was a young man. I was only 17 when he died. I couldn't do anything for him, and my dad and whatever, he was like a workaholic, and so he had his leg taken from diabetes too.
Ooh.
So he was and what ended up happening, he ended up going into a diabetic coma, and he died. Now, the day that he died, and I always went there on Wednesdays because that was the day I had off from work. Because even at a young age, I had to work a lot, And so the day that he died, I was supposed to go visit him, but I decided to go to the gym. And I was tired from work, and I didn't want to drive all the way to Temple. And so I always took him something to eat, and I would sit with him, and we would talk, And that day, I just decided to not go. And then my dad called me that evening and said that he had gone into a diabetic. He ate something he wasn't supposed to.
Oh.
And so I carried this guilt with me, a tremendous amount of guilt. But he came to me in a dream. And now this has happened to me many times. My grandmother too, that he was married
I've
to
had
at one
that.
point. She came to me in a dream also. And that was the thing that when she came to me in the dream, that's when I changed my life, you know. But before that, she was still alive for a while, like maybe 12, 13 years after he died. But after he died, because they were separated,
Mm-hmm.
he came to me in a dream and was like talking to me and telling me, that everything was okay. But I just kind of took it as a dream. Now, here's a weird thing. I don't think I've ever told anyone this that's actually on the show or any of my episodes I've done. But I got a phone call when I was living in that old house, the old haunted house, from my grandfather. If this is gonna make it's really weird. Follow me here. I was sitting on the couch just watching TV, and guess what I was watching? The Twilight Zone. I was watching, and I wasn't never really a big Twilight Zone fan, but I had a roommate who was.
Right.
And he was all like watching it and stuff. And so I was just sitting there kind of bored. And here's the funny thing. My phone, it was around the time when my cell phone had started to overtake the use of the home phone.
Right.
And so the home phone rings, which didn't happen very often. And I answered it, and I heard it was like a crackling, popping noise on the phone. And I distinctly heard his voice on the other line, and he was saying, hello. And then he said my name, and he called me Josh Boy.
Uh-huh.
That's a funny name, but that's what he would call me. And I was like, so I started saying, Grandpa, I started trying to talk to him, and then it just kept crackling, and then it just went dead. So here's the funny thing. So I hung the phone up, and I just sat there for a minute, and so I picked the phone back up, and I kept, and it was nothing. There was no ringtone. There was nothing on the phone. So then my brother comes home from work, and I told him, I said, I think I just got a call, and let it out, Sal. Sal's over here trying to sneeze.
Sorry about that.
Let it out, man. Let it out. Don't hold it in, bro.
Oh, no.
Your head will explode. That's what the science tells us.
Yeah, or something else will explode.
But I told him, I said, I think I just got a really weird phone call from my grandpa, and he was like, on the home phone? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, dude, that thing's been disconnected for like, 2 months. And I was like, huh. So I was just kind of like taken aback by that. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that. And my other roommate was like, we don't have a home phone anymore.
It was there for ornamentation.
Yeah. And I don't even know what happened. Like, I guess it didn't dawn on me. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. We don't even use it. It's just been sitting there. And that was weird. So
yeah, that's crazy.
So how do you explain that? That was one of the weird things that happened in that house. And I've been saving that story. I didn't want to tell that story with the other creepy stuff that went on in that house because it didn't jibe with what we were talking about, because that to me wasn't a negative experience.
No,
that was positive, definitely.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna tell about my experience after my mom passed away.
Please do.
Yeah, definitely do.
My mom, towards the end, she passed away of lung cancer. She actually went into remission for 3 to 4 months. But when it came back in a gland above her kidney, and then it metastasized and went everywhere. But she fought real hard, and we had hospice that came out to the house so she could be as comfortable as possible, and be at home and not in a hospital. But I had to help her use the restroom, the bathroom, and everything, and she would cry to me and say, I'm so sorry. I said, Mom, I'm like, you don't even worry about that. I'm like, you wiped my butt for how many years? I said, you're still taking care of me. I said, you don't even worry about it. But they say when somebody passes away, if they have an illness for any length of time, like usually after they pass away, it takes them a bit to get their energy back up to like to communicate with you, or that's what I was always taught from my mother and my grandmother. And she always told me, she's like, I'm gonna be watching out for you. She used to call me baby doll. She's like, I gotta take care of my baby doll. I was her unfinished business. But I had a lot of guilt because I was going to college full time. I had 2 jobs, and you always think that your parents are like Wonder Woman and Superman, that they're going to live forever. And people, if you got your mothers around, you need to hug them and love them, because our time isn't promised to us. We can go at any second. So you need to embrace the people that mean something to you. Sorry, but
No, don't be sorry for that.
No, that is 100%
Correct.
super duper wise advice.
Yep. Young people take things for granted. They don't realize
yes,
that.
they do. Yes, they do, and it's sad. But I had working up to this. Well, I'll tell the. She came to me in a dream. My mom was in a wheelchair, towards the end, because she couldn't walk. She didn't have any strength. She was fighting. She was still trying to go through chemo and radiation because she wanted to beat it again. And I have never been to the Grand Canyon in my life, but I was at the Grand Canyon, and we were standing on this ledge, and she was sitting in her wheelchair, and she told me, she's like, "Baby doll, don't you worry about me. I'm just fine. I'm great." She's like, "I feel bad for you. I feel bad for you and your dad and your brothers." She's like, "'Cause, I'm great." She's like, "Look, I can stand up again." She's like, "Look, I can walk again." And she's like, "Look, I can even tie my own shoes again." She's like, "So don't you cry for me, because I don't hurt anymore." And I know that was her way of letting me know that, not to be hurt and upset. Yes, I'm gonna miss her, but that she wasn't in pain anymore. And we're the ones that are left behind. We're the ones dealing with hell on earth, basically. My grandfather came and visited me after he passed away. He had another hospital incident, like your grandfather. They had left a sponge in him during surgery.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he would have been fine. It was the sponge. It caused a massive infection. He passed away. I actually saw him. I woke up. It was 1:27 in the morning. And I woke up. I was crying. I knew he was dead. I specifically went out and looked at the clock in the microwave, and then I went to turn around to go to back to my bedroom, and he was in his army uniform, and he gave me like a little salute and gave me a wink, and then he walked through our garage side door. But I mean, that was me seeing him. In the dream, I had it like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks after he passed away. My grandfather had loved his lazy boy recliner and anything sports. And in my dream, I was in this big building. I mean, I went to this elevator. There were so many floors, and I had to go straight to the top. And it was a long ride. And I walk in, and there's my grandfather's black leather lazy boy, and he's got on every single wall there is, flat screen after flat screen after flat screen. And he's sitting in his chair, and he's got his remote control, and he's like, "Look, I can watch any game I want to at any time I want to." He's like, "This is great. All the sports I can want, And he told me he loved me, and I knew that he was good. He was okay, because I mean, you'd have to know my grandfather. Sports in his lazy boy recliner, he was in heaven. So I'm a firm believer that they come and they try to interact with us and let us know that they're good, they're okay. They try to warn us. It's just up to us to open our eyes and really pay attention, instead of trying to push it off. The other story, my mom was a very sick little girl. I don't know if you guys are familiar with rheumatic fever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Is that the one they called scarlet fever?
I believe
Rheumatic
so.
fever, I believe, is.
I believe
think
the
that's what it
alternate name is.
Or is it rheumatoid? Is it?
I think they used to call it scarlet fever. I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard the terminology. Rheumatic. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah,
no,
please
it's okay.
tell us.
Rheumatic fever. Well, I'm probably not saying it right, but she
no.
very
We'll Google it. We'll figure it out.
okay.
Yes,
She
please,
was
but please tell us a story.
she was very, very sick. I mean, to the point where she was sick for it was at least a year, probably like a year and a half. She had to learn how to walk again, but the doctors honestly didn't think that she was going to live. Um, she was, I think, like 11 years old when it happened, and the doctors had told my grandmother that she cannot get up out of bed. That I mean, if there's any chance that she can't, she isn't to get out of bed because the strain on her heart from moving around would literally, it could kill her. So my mom, you'd have to know my mom. She's high strung like me. She was high strung like me, and she just bounced off the walls everywhere. Even being sick, she was constantly getting out of bed, getting out of bed. And my grandmother had taken bed sheets and literally had to tie her down to the bed because they were so afraid that one of the times that she got up, she'd end up dying because of being so ill and not realizing being so young that you're gonna hurt your heart and everything. She had to get shots when any of us got like strep throat. She would have to go get a shot because of the illness, even you know years later, so she wouldn't get it again. Because I guess that could, I don't know what the why that is, but it was really, they didn't know if she was going to live or not. And at one point, I guess she was really, really bad off. And my grandma didn't think she was going to live. My grandfather didn't think she was going to live. The doctors. And I think at this point, she was probably back in the hospital. But she said that, she was worried. She finally realized, why my grandma was getting on her and not getting out, that she needed to listen and not try to get out of bed and everything. And she said she was so sick, um, just so sick. But and she didn't think she was gonna live. And she said that she's like, "Baby doll, I know it's gonna sound crazy, but she's like, don't ever doubt God and Jesus." She's like, because they're here, they watch over us and they take care of us because I saw him. She said that Jesus came and he sat on her bed and he was stroking her hair. And he said, "Little one, you're gonna be just fine. You're gonna be just fine. You're gonna be running around and playing, so don't you worry." And she said he kissed her forehead and then he was gone. But knowing my mom, I know she wasn't lying. And to me, that just shows his love for us, that when you need him the most, he is there and he is gonna, he's gonna let you know that he's there. Her favorite poem was always foot was it called Footprints in the Sand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because that poem reminded her of when she was sick as a little girl. But yeah. Nobody should ever doubt God and Jesus because they're definitely watching over us for sure.
Well, that right there, for all those who believe in God, teachings of Jesus Christ and Jesus and everything, that's something that I would say that losing faith in that is more detrimental than not believing. And that brought up a question when you were telling us about that. For me, is do you think that particular instance is what pretty much got your mom into the routine of asking you guys, what did you dream about, and those kind of things, just that seemed to ultimately solidify in your case that she was always going to be there whenever you needed her.
Um no, I had the way we were raised. I mean, the way I was explained, I mean, this is like generation after generation. That's always been psychic. My mom always had dreams. My grandma told me a story that when she was like 4 years old, they were getting out of the car and walking up to the house. And my mom, as a little girl, she's like, "Oh, mama, mama, look at the angel. Isn't she beautiful, mama? Isn't she beautiful?" And my grandma said she looked up at the sky and I didn't see anything. But she's like, I know she saw something. Her whole face was lit up, but we were just taught that. I was always taught to pay attention to my dreams. If it's actually saved my parents from a real bad car accident. Um, I had one. They used to have a craft business, and they would travel to different malls and set up booths. And in my dream, they had a big truck, and they had a trailer where they would, pull to travel to these shows. And in my dream, the brakes cut out, and they ended up slamming into like a maroon colored Cadillac.
Oh,
But I told my parents about it. Because that's what we were taught to do, and it actually saved them because they were on the way to the show, and they had a maroon color Cadillac in front of them, and then my mom remembered, oh, you remember Catherine's dream, we gotta be careful. So my dad ended up, he was a mechanic, he's retired, but he realized he had no brakes. His brakes did go out. He had to pull off to the side of the road. But I kind of got sidetracked with your question. But it it's always been. It's like my grandmother, I guess, did the same thing with my mom, and her mom did it with her. It's just, I believe that, certain families probably are more. I think everybody's got a sixth sense, myself, but I just think that other people's might be more developed than others.
yes. Some have that. Some have it stronger than others, and I totally, I totally agree with that. And I also believe that if you don't have that strong sixth sense, I believe you can work on it in order to heighten it. It's like anything.
Exactly.
It's something
Yep.
you got to work on, and kind of like building the muscles in the gym. Everybody can have the big muscles, but you got to go into the gym and lift weights and you observe a proper diet and sleep and everything else, and you'll eventually too have the big muscles like those bodybuilders if that's what you desire.
Exactly. I agree. The more it seemed like, I had friends that, they one they could channel. See, I was still nervous talking about it because, that some people you don't generally with, normal conversation, you're not talking about paranormal because people look at you like you have three heads. But you had a friend that could channel, and it just, like with I've noticed myself in dealing with a demon, I always like my sense of smell is heightened. It's gonna sound so weird, but like I smell when it's an evil spirit, or I'd say demon. I smell like rot and decay, and I mean, let alone the feeling that you get. If you're dealing with a demon, there's just a feeling. It's just pure evil. But I get a smell with it, and it's rot and decay.
Something, Catherine, we were talking about. We did a show with Chris recently, and I can't tell you whether or not, as the airing of this show will be,
If we've
whether
released it or not.
whether we have released it or not. We haven't decided. But we were talking about how the supernatural aspect of Bigfoot and Dogman, and I believe that these wolfmen, some of them in particular, they give off a rotten smell. I think that's a cue. I don't think it's just them rolling around out in the brush, whatever. I think that when people have that rotten smell associated with it, because it doesn't make sense that they would smell that bad. Because predators,
Exactly.
like I've been in close proximity to predators before, and why would they have such a horrible smell? That would give away their location to their prey.
Exactly.
So I've never really been a big believer in the whole, like if a panther or a cougar or whatever you want to call it is stalking a deer and it smells like that, this animal is going to flee because it's going to smell that. Wolves don't smell like that. I had a friend who actually had two wolves. He had a female and a male wolf, and right over here in not Giddings. What is the town right before you get Giddings, Smithville.
Oh yeah.
In Smithville, and he had a full grown. I mean, and he let them run around and stuff out there, and they were a little wild, whatever. But they didn't smell. These animals. Even if living out in the wild, they don't have this horrible stench that the Bigfoot will give off, that the werewolf creatures will give off, if for lack of a better word, or dog man, you want to call it that, whatever. But people will talk about them smelling like rot, or that they will smell like garbage, or that they'll have a smell, a sulfuride type smell. And so
that's demon. Yep.
It just seems like it's demonic, and I'm not saying they all do. I think that when we're dealing with the ones that are not demonic, the ones that are just the natural flesh and blood creatures that are running around out there, that I believe they exist too. I don't think you're smelling that, because the one I saw looked like a natural flesh and blood creature, and I don't remember a smell associated with it. So when people talk about that smell, I'm just like, what? That has to be something demonic or something evil, because we would occasionally get this rotting smell of death, in the house, and then sometimes we would get a smell like perfume or cologne, like a cigar smell that I just thought, wow, that smells like someone smoking a cigar,
Yeah.
And of course, when we talked, earlier, Catherine, I told you about a house that I actually, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but when you're done telling your story, then I will interject with that story, because I have a story about a house that I worked at that an elderly couple had died in, and I smelled rose water. Very common. Yeah, I would smell that. I'd smell lavender.
Yeah, and that's the older generations, like our grandparents and so on and so forth, and great grandparents. Rose water for the ladies was common.
That was very common. Yes,
it was common, and lavender was too.
They would. I heard they used to put it in their hair also to make their hair smell good.
Yeah,
long before the day of the super perfumed shampoo, being available. Right. And that's another thing. That's another thing. Josh is talking about these creatures, these man wolves, wolf men, werewolves, dog men, whatever you want to call them. I don't throw out that option that the ones that are truly supernatural, i.e., associated with demonic, something evil, the smell of sulfur is definitely something I would put some stock in and say that would be a telltale sign that they are not natural. The natural with that on the natural side, like the one he saw, I would think that if you were able to smell dead flesh, rotting flesh. Well, it's been proven scientifically that some dogs, domesticated dogs, will roll on their kill after they've killed something. So, but either way, the smell of death, for me, I'll go either way. But if you do smell sulfur with one of these mysterious creatures, then I would more lean to that's something paranormal. That's just those are just my thoughts on it.
I just think it would be very hard for an animal to be a predator smelling that bad, because people talk about smelling a Sasquatch from like literally 100 yards away. I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, how could that sneak up on anything and kill anything?
I think a lot of that would be more of a mechanism to just scare away any and all living creatures that are in the area. If they smell
you'd also
rotting
scare
flesh,
away all your prey, and you'd go hungry. So,
well, I
doesn't
would
sound very evolutionarily sound as a theory.
Well, I mean, there's many out there that believe in the Bigfoot community that the Bigfoot have scent glands similar to like gorillas do. They'll give off a scent when stressed out. It's.
Does it smell like rotting death though?
It is.
Does it smell like? Because I've heard it both ways. I've heard people say that it smells like bad body odor mixed with garbage.
Yeah,
that's understandable. Yeah. But what we're talking about is the smell of rotting death.
Flesh.
Okay. Yeah. I don't get that. I mean, and I've heard it that mixed with sulfur. I've heard that a lot.
Now mixed. I mean,
I've gotten probably 200 accounts in the last 5 years of I'm just talking Sasquatch, of just people have told me I saw a Bigfoot, I saw a Bigfoot, I saw a Bigfoot. You get probably 20% of that, maybe 25 even, where there is that element of like this death smell with like sulfur. I've had people, like 1 in 4 people probably say that.
Yeah, the sulfur.
I mean,
would
what is
definitely-
that? I mean, is that because I mean, to me, I don't see the benefits of that. If you are a supernatural creature, though, what does it matter? You don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're coming out of some hell realm. What do you what do you care whether how you smell? You're not going to be going to HEB and buying the Axe body spray or Walmart or whatever because you don't care. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's the flesh and blood Bigfoot that we see buying the Axe body spray. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I made a joke. No, seriously. Do you see what I'm saying though? I don't see the point. You know what I mean? Like I just don't. And one of the things I heard about like the goat man, you know, it's like that very earthy, nasty smell. And then you hear people talking about the goat man as they get this horrible, horrible sense of dread and a feeling of like just imminent death, you know, and then you get that horrible smell. That to me is a supernatural being. I mean, to me. And I think that when you, Catherine, talk about smelling that, you it's almost like your olfactory system is warning you of demonic presence.
Yeah, it's definitely telling you pay attention.
And the way I look at it too is the ones that are smelling of this rot and decay and death. To me, that, in my opinion, that's demonic. But I think that they're choosing dogman, werewolf, whatever we want to call it, to instill great fear into the person, because demons thrive. They feed off of pain,
that negative
fear,
energy.
Aggression. Yes, exactly. And I believe that they're trying to portray anything that they possibly can to get, you know, the biggest surge of fear out of the person to feed off. And they think that a big hairy dog man or werewolf is the perfect thing to to do that, which obviously it works. I know that I would be, you know, I'd probably have a heart attack if I ran into them.
Well, do you remember the movie It?
Oh God, I hate clowns.
The original. The original one. Remember he appeared to, I think the kid's name was Richie.
Yeah.
Because his fear was werewolves, so he appeared to him as a werewolf.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe that too. I worked in a building at one time where I thought that and 100% no, it was not a dog man. It was not a werewolf. It was, and I've said this before. I worked in a couple buildings where they were notoriously haunted. Like everybody knows they're haunted. I mean, you know, reading the guard log and one of them in particular was quite upsetting. And I just remember thinking, man, no wonder they have such a high turnover. And that particular post at that company paid more, like $1.25 more than the others, which was like, you know, back in the 90s. That's pretty good.
Huge.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, I'll work it. And then I realized why. And that's for another episode. But there was one particular entity, and I know, Tony, you've talked about it, the cleaning person. There was a entity that appeared like a hairy creature wearing a cleaning uniform, and I saw a glimpse of it going to the cleaning closet. Because I was so my nerves were so shot working in that place that I would sit there with my headphones in so I didn't have to hear the voices and the noises that were going on around me.
Oh,
and
wow.
So yeah, it was pretty bad. I couldn't handle it. I lasted 2 months there. That's, you know,
I could give you credit because I don't think I could.
well, you know, and you're in this big building for 12 hours a night, and I worked it 5 nights a week, you know, because we were shorthanded, so it was 4 to 5 nights per week. And I would sit there and I would have to do these patrols. And of course, the job called for 2.5 hours to be up in the tower. So you couldn't just stay down in the control room. The rest of the time you could. But for 2.5 hours, you had to be patrolling up in the building, and they had a DTEX. So you had to stick the key into the hole, and then it would click a computer that would say, hey, you were there. And so I was up, and this was a long time ago. This was a high technology for that time, you know?
Yeah.
And so they had this system, and the property manager, she was not a very lenient person. She wanted us to be up in that tower, and she knew full well that place had paranormal activity going on there. There were people that would try to come to that building sometimes and want to mess around and see, you know, and I would have to tell them, no, you can't come in. And I would catch them on the outside of the building, you know, messing around and stuff because it was supposed to be haunted. But up in that building, I saw what I thought was a creature that I smelled a stench, a sulfury type of stench or something, and I saw what I thought was a cleaning person, but
Mhm.
it was almost comical. What I witnessed was like this werewolf-looking entity wearing like what looked like the cleaning shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw it go like pushing the little cart and go into the room, and then I could see it moving back and forth in there, and I thought to myself, that was the day I quit. I was like, I'm losing my dang mind. The only thing that gave me confirmation that I wasn't crazy was there were two other guys I worked with. And one guy, his name was Shelton. He was a really, really cool dude. Him and another guy that I worked with named Zach. And those two guys, I talked to them outside of that place, and they told me, no, dude, you're not crazy. The guy, Zach, one time, there was a dentist's office up in that building, and he claims that he heard what he thought was like a jet engine roaring down the hallway, and it shook the building. It was crazy stuff that was happening there. And so they convinced me, they were like, no, dude, no, it is, that building is jacked up. I mean, it is really jacked up. They actually had a picture, a ghost on camera.
Oh my God.
I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the ghost like go through a wall.
Oh man.
Like it looked like a man that came out like, in the 1920s, how they dress with the top hat and and the cane.
Yep.
I mean, it literally looked like the Monopoly guy.
Oh wow.
But it was like he was a real man, and he came out of one wall and he went into another wall, and then it turned out that used to be a door. There used to be doors right there because I went to that floor, and so that building. Oh God,
was it old?
To this day, it gives me nightmares. I'm not going to name
building though.
I'll tell you off cam. I'll tell you off the show because, like I said, I don't want them suing me because it's a very prominent big building here in Austin, and I don't need them. I don't need them saying something, because
I get it.
I don't want them. Yeah, it's a very large company, and I don't need them saying something if anybody were to listen to the show. And
it
then
sounds
go back
like it was an old building, though. It
was an old building, but I don't think it was 1920s. I just think there might have been something there before, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, and I mean, right there on that same block, there was another building that's no longer there, and I think Scorpion told you about some of the stuff that went on at that place.
Oh yeah,
we both saw this same entity when we compared notes, and we figured out that, and it was right down the street from that building.
Oh man!
And also, there's another restaurant that's on that same street, and Anthony, you know about that restaurant, and it's haunted, and it's actually on a haunted tour.
Oh.
So yeah, and so when my wife first came, we went to all these places, and I told her, I said, yeah, we're over here at this restaurant, and it's all good, but I was like, that building over there is way more haunted than anything around, and it's not on the tour because they don't allow people to go into the building, but
wow,
yeah, it's definitely a creepy place, and I could go on and on about
like
that.
It.
But the point being is that I saw this creature that I know 100% was not a werewolf. It was not a dog man. It was not a Bigfoot. It was hairy and it looked whatever, but it was playing games, knowing what I know now, I know that it was not, it was just an evil spirit. It was a demonic, and it was messing with my mind.
Speaking about that, you're saying it appeared to look like a werewolf type creature wearing these clothes. Well, I mean, by this time, you'd already had your Dogman encounter, correct?
Yeah, the Dogman encounter would have been about 5 years. I'm sorry, Catherine, what was that?
I was just going to say the same thing, that what Sal's saying, that it knew what you went through when you were younger, and it was going to use it against you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it did. And that's what I believed. But it didn't matter to me whether or not that's what was happening or wasn't. I quit, and I told my boss, and I said, can you move me from this place? And he's like, oh, not you too. And I said, yes, me too. I thought I could handle it. I could use the extra money because this thing followed me home. Like it followed me home. I'm gonna talk on another episode about this eventually. I don't want to get into the whole whatever today, but it was, yeah, I was getting weird phone calls from that place in the middle of the night, and I thought maybe it was one of the guards that was calling me. There was some weird stuff that went on, a lot of weird stuff. I could do a show. I will do a show just about that building. So what ended up happening, he moves me from that building to another building that was maybe not as haunted, but the floors that I was working on were. And the guards, they were telling me, I said, yeah, I came from such and such building. And they were like, well, welcome to this building because this building's got its own situation. and you will be on those floors without. So I went back to my boss after some of that stuff was happening, and I said, dude, I don't want to be around ghosts, dude. Do you understand? Like, this is, and he was just like flat out ex-Marine, 16-year Marine. He was like, I don't believe in that. And I said, well, you know what? Go work it yourself and tell me if you believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, give me 2 weeks in there and I'll move you to another place where I've never had any reports, you know. And so, and he told me that both those places had been, but that's all he had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But he did say, you know, and I ended up working for this guy for a long time at another company too, you know. And I just remember him telling me, well, there are reports of that, but I don't believe it. And I'm like, well, have you actually worked it? Because that's the linchpin, you know, because I heard a piano playing. Me and 2 other guards were working in that second building together, you know, not the first one where I saw the weird creature, but, and we all heard the piano playing, you know. Of course, I couldn't tell my boss that because we were all supposed to be stationed somewhere else,
Okay.
and we were all gathered together snooping around and then we heard the piano playing by itself. So that was weird, you know. And so, anyways, yeah, we're getting off on the hauntings and all that. But the point being, the demonic entities do sometimes give off a smell.
Oh yeah, I would, like I said earlier, definitely when you get a sulfur smell, I would attribute that to the paranormal.
Well, I think the rot too.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, yeah, that makes.
I know
sense
that
too.
a lot of Bigfoot people are their mindset is, Bigfoot just stink really bad. They roll in garbage. Okay, that's fine. You want to believe that they roll around in kills and they have whatever. It is a strange coincidence. Can we all just agree that it is a strange coincidence that they smell like demonic entities? Okay,
Exactly.
that's my point. And I've have some people that lived out the devil's backbone that claimed that there was a red-eyed type Bigfoot creature and that it smelled like death. They literally told me that. They said that when you would see these things, that it smelled like something dead and sulfury. And so it's a mixture of that. And so that I do believe that is some type of demonic entity. I don't believe that these creatures are all, you know, whatever. And I think, Catherine, you touched on it. We just agreed on that they can pretend, they can mimic, you know, and they can mimic loved ones too. These entities, they can do things, they can manipulate, they have access to a higher spiritual realm than we do, but it's still a lower vibration, which resounds with us. And I know that if you study any of these types of things, I know that they are not angelic. They are not of that level of where the angels reside. They are in between ours and the angels. So they have access to the spirit and the flesh. So they are masters at manipulating these, you know, whatever. And like I've said before, it talks about the jinn, you know, it talks about the demons or whatever you want to call them, and that they actually have neighbors. You know, it says that. And so there's weird, I mean, like what are these neighbors? It talks about them in the Hadith, I believe it is and then the Quran, when you're talking, because they call demons jinn.
Right.
Then when you read the book of Enoch, you know, you get into this whole other like aspect of what these things are and where they came from. And I think that when me and DDoS and you, Sal, were talking about it, we touched on a lot of that, because it was like there's demons, you know, that we know of as demons, but they're fallen angels, but there's also rebellious angels. And those are 2 different things. And then they had offspring. And of course, when the flood came, then they were known as evil spirits. Those evil spirits, I believe, are the Nephilim. And I believe that they are, if they aren't the jinn, then they are something akin to them. And maybe that's what the neighbors are that the Hadith talks about.
Be.
I don't know. I just know that there's, in all of these holy books, there's a lot of references to these creatures, and they have abilities and things that we don't have.
Correct.
And I know that they can manipulate us. And I know that another thing that they, when they do manipulate, because in the house I lived in, they would be doppelgangers. They wouldn't be perfect copies though. Right. There's always something not correct. I had one friend reach out to me just recently because he heard the interview with Chief.
Yes.
And he mentioned seeing me as a doppelganger, but I had blue eyes.
Oh.
And I told him I absolutely do not have blue eyes. And he goes, then that was the doppelganger. Because he goes, I always wondered that, because I was calling you and you were on the porch and the dog was like way across the yard away from you. and you were like standing there on the porch. This is what he told me, and that he went up to the door, the screen door, and he spoke my name. I didn't answer him, and then I turned and I looked at him, and he just said that he remembers me kind of looking like through him, not really looking at him.
Yeah.
And then my eyes kind of looked glazed over, and he was like, he goes, I remember that specifically, that the dog was cowering in the corner of the yard away from you, which wasn't like that because the dogs were very close to me. And if I was outside, they were going to be all over me.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, wow, that's weird. And he said he got a really weird vibe. And then he went back to go lay down on the couch. Then he sees me come out of the hallway. And he thought that he was just maybe watching TV and lost track of where I was at. And he goes, you don't have blue eyes though, right? And I'm like, because he's like trying to remember, because he thought his mind was like,
playing tricks on him.
Because when he heard us talking about the doppelganger thing, he had never told me this. And so I told him, I said, yeah, I have, dark eyes. And he goes, no, that's not you then. He goes, he's like, I wondered what that was, because he said it always bothered him, but it wasn't until he heard us all talking about it on the show, and a friend of mine downtown told him, hey, Wolf's got a podcast and he talks about the old house. This guy only stayed with us for about a month and a half.
Oh, okay.
But he did mention that. He said that he remembered that incident. Well, that's also part of that whole trickster. There's a book, if anybody's interested in reading, it's written by Rosemary Ellen Guiley, I believe, and it's called The Vengeful Jinn. And then there's like a companion to it. I don't know, Anthony, you've read both of them. Anyways, there's a couple of them. There's one, and then there's a second one that she wrote, and she goes into depth about this and how some of these cryptids and some of these spirits are just trickster demons that are playing games with us.
I wouldn't throw that I wouldn't throw that option off the table at all, because it's been written throughout our history as a race of human beings that the jinns, the evil spirits. Jinn, of course, being Middle Eastern, and of course,
that's just what they call. It's a catch-all for anything.
Yeah, just like the cucuy for people of Mexican heritage. The cucuy was a catch-all for this monster ghost, whatever it was. And speaking on that doppelganger thing, I'd watched probably a few years ago. I came across an episode, and I can't remember the name of a show, but it was on. It was one of those kind of like History Channel when they actually had some of these serious documentary types on
Haunted
paranormal
history,
stuff.
Maybe.
I could be wrong. I'm not even going to speculate on the title, but it talked about doppelgangers, and one case in particular that I remember was a lady in Florida claiming that her daughter had a doppelganger, or the daughter claimed she had a doppelganger that was showing up at the house opposite when she was not there.
This was in Florida?
Yeah, and the mother of this girl claimed to have seen this doppelganger, and she said pretty much what you just mentioned, that, your friend contacted you, said that you had blue eyes. Well, the lady mentioned that she saw the doppelganger. She said it looked like my daughter, but there was something not off. Something was not right, because a mother knows her daughter, and, mothers know every inch of their children. And the mother said, yeah, that it looked like her, but it wasn't her. There was something off. And some of the physical characteristics she was describing just said, yeah, it looked like her, but certain things about her just did not fit what her daughter was.
I think it's a law.
Say again?
I'm speculating here, but I think it's some sort of law. I mean, I really do, because I believe that these, just like we are supposed to adhere to laws. Mm-hmm. And I know, Catherine, we were talking, and you were talking about how you're like, I don't break the law. I speed.
Yeah, exactly.
everybody does that. Everybody breaks the law to a degree. You might speed, you might run a stop sign.
Yep.
But you might get in a high speed chase every once in a while and escape the cops. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. No, but we all do break the law to minor degrees.
Yes.
Yes.
But for the most part, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say speed limits are just recommended. They're not
recommendations. That's
They're
right.
Just a recommendation is how I look at them.
I believe that we all do it. Okay. But I think that there are laws, though, that govern these things, just as there are laws that govern us, and the bulk of us do follow those laws. But by the flip side of it, I believe that some of these spirits, they don't follow the law. because I believe that whatever religion you believe in, God, Allah, Jehovah, whatever your belief is, Vishnu or whatever, you believe, most religions believe in one all-powerful God that is above all the other angels, gods, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, there are laws and rules that govern what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing, and one is that they're not supposed to be interfering and messing around. But there are outlaws.
Yeah,
and just
always.
as in there are outlaws in this world, and believe me, I know a lot of them. They're the kind of people who do not give a crap about your law. They don't care. They wake up every day. They eat, sleep, and breathe law breaking. And I've known people like this. I've known these people very, very well, and I know people that were just like to the point where they would actually go out of their way to break a law if they could because they had such contempt for the law. The same goes for the spirit world. It says in the Bible, I believe, is in the spirit, is in the flesh, is above, is below.
Yeah.
I know that there are going to be spirits that are outlaws. They are going to go against what is the norm, what is natural, what is right, what is true. They're going to break the laws. They're going to break the laws of man. They're going to break the laws that God has set down. Now, I'm pretty sure like if they get caught or they get punished or whatever, that it's just like it is here. You're going to get punished. You're going to get caught. That doesn't mean that they're not going to do what they do.
Oh, exactly.
Just as like a murderer or a rapist or some sort of like thief, they're going to commit the crime. They're going to do what they do. If they don't get caught, they don't get caught. But eventually, they get caught and they get punished. But that a lot of times that doesn't deter them.
No,
it doesn't deter them. I've known people that, and they'll even braggartly talk about the ignorant crimes that they've committed. I've had people do that, like trying to impress me with some sort of horrible confession of what they've done, almost in a bragging way, and you're like, wow, you are really retarded. You want to talk about that, whatever. Well, demons will do that too. I know that it was I don't know if you've ever heard of Malachi Martin, and he was talking about he was on Coast to Coast a lot, and he was a priest that was involved in a lot of exorcisms, and he would talk about how these demons, they like to brag. They would brag about the people whose souls they had destroyed, who the lives they had ruined, and how they had information about people, they were able to like point out their people that were in the room. They could point out their sin, like, I know you and I know what you have done, and I know who you are, and I know you lust after this, and you're greedy, and so these demons have this kind of access to our, because we can't see them and they can see us. And so, yeah, the whole thing with that though is just to point out that these entities, they have a leg up when it comes to being able to see us and hear us, and we can't see and hear them typically. So there has to be some sort of laws in place that governs what they're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing, but that doesn't mean that they adhere to that. And of course, when you're talking about human beings, we do the same thing. Like if there's no one looking, well, I'll just run this red light, but now you got cameras, and or if there's no one looking, I'm just going to throw this, candy bar wrapper out the window or whatever it is, but that's usually the extent of what you're going to do as a lawbreaker. But there are lawbreakers like, mass murder, serial killers, mass murderers, people who do bad things to kids, horrible people that do these horrible things. I think the same thing is with the spirit world. There are bad, mischievous, really evil entities who take great pleasure in not only maybe hurting their fellow entities, but in hurting mankind. Why not?
Or anything they come
across. And we, as humans, we have people who are deviants and hurt animals, we're like animals to them. Why not hurt and kick a human? I think that being...
I was just going to say...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think they look at us like play toys.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not a foreign concept. Yeah, it's entertainment.
Form of entertainment. Yeah, and then we're talking about the juvenile dogmen and how they are responsible for some of the crimes, I guess, like chasing people's cars and yanking on the door handles and things like that. And we were talking about that. Sal.
We talked about that. How
maybe it's the juvenile demons that are the younger ones, or the ones that aren't following the laws.
Yeah, the ones that are trying to make a name for themselves
or something.
I think it stands to reason that like we have our juvenile young people, hey, I dare you to do this, this, and that. I bet you won't do it. You ain't got a hair on your rear end if you don't go do this, and daring and all the other stuff, right? When you're young, and so there's one. Well, yeah, you think so? Here, hold my beer. I'm going to go do this, and do something ridiculous that it's not considered acceptable. And of course, we were all young. We all did some of those dumb things, but
yes,
we agreed,
did.
and we agreed. Josh and I agree that the dog man, Bigfoot, their juveniles go through the same thing. And then when you think about the spirit realm, why not them? Why not? I mean, it even stands to reason. Why not have that be their lifestyle, even if they're at a level where they're considered full-grown adults, that they still have this attitude because they've always done it. So to me, I wouldn't put that past even the oldest of demons, if you will, to still have the attitude. I'll do what I want, and watch me do this to.
Well,
to
and there are going to be those that are going to say you have to be protected by the blood of Christ, and I am one of those people that believes in that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have a large number of people out there who do not believe in Christ, and they are not protected by the blood of Christ. And I think for those particular people, I think life is a crapshoot, because I think that at any time you could expire on this mortal coil, and then you're faced with eternity of whatever, or you could get taken by something, because if you commit enough sin, it says that God turns you over to the reprobate's mind, and you live beyond His grace. Now, when you're beyond God's grace, anybody who believes like I do will know that that's when you're susceptible. But like I said, I do believe there are laws that are in place, and most of these entities probably do follow that. Or you would see a way more large percentage of people just spitting up pea soup and walking upside down backwards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that sounds funny, but I mean, you would see more people being overtaken by demonic entities. Yes. I think you would see more and more people, like, just, which you are now, actually. But I think that you would see like a humongous percentage of people that are just completely unfunctioning, dysfunctional, because they are demonically obsessed or possessed. So there is some sort of something there to prevent that. But like I said, there are those that don't care about the laws of man or God or nature, and they pervert them.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. It's go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Catherine. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Well, obviously, I'm sure. So you're noticing an incline in paranormal activity. Do you think that the Mandela effect has anything to do with that? Like, what's going, like if we're in another, like if some type of, I don't know, portal or something was opened by certain.
Let's go back to 2012, if that's what you're getting at. I don't know if that's the exact date, but that I believe the reason that of course everybody made a big, what to do about the Mayan calendar. I believe, speculation here, that the Mayan calendar was telling us that the year Read 1 was the end of that timeline, and that it did collapse into another timeline on, was it December 21st, 2012, I believe?
Yeah, that was the final date.
Because the remote viewers couldn't see past it either. I mean, I remember they were talking about it like Coast to Coast and some other shows, and they were like, the remote viewers weren't able to, the psychics weren't, and my friend's mom's a psychic, and she couldn't see past 2012. They couldn't remote view past 2012. Nobody was able to see what was going to happen. Nobody knew. And it was just all speculation. And they're like, is there going to be some cataclysmic event? I believe this. And I told my nephew, Anthony, sitting right across from me, he's my sound guy. Do you remember, Anthony, when we talked about it and I said nothing that we can actually see, touch, or smell is going to happen on 2012? You remember that? Okay. That doesn't mean that just because we can't see, touch, or smell it with our senses that something did not happen.
Right.
I believe that something did happen. I believe that there was a shift, and I believe that our timelines went into another timeline, and I think that all that stuff, the predictions and everything, could have had something to do with CERN. And I've said it before that I believe that something happened, something went on. CERN has something to do with that. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you exactly. Maybe they opened up something,
They caused a rip in the fabric of space and time
that
altered the timeline that was moving forward and set it off potentially in a different trajectory or slightly. I think we're still traveling in the same trajectory, except we're not traveling down the center lane, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
We're now in the left lane or the right lane.
Exactly.
But we're still headed down that same big highway with multiple lanes, but it's just not the original center lane we were on anymore. Now it's, on the left lane. And that, though you may be headed into the same general direction, but you are not on the exact same trajectory you were on to begin with.
Do you know that I went to the, I was actually when I was on my vacation, I was in Roswell, and I was in Reno and in Denver, and we went to 3 different planetariums, and I mean, they were all different. I mean,
wow.
It's not like you've gone to one planetarium, you've seen them all. No, and you know which one was the best? The one in Roswell.
Oh,
the
really?
one in Roswell had a little Roswell theater there, and there was a guy there who was an astronomer, and he was like kind of semi-retired or whatever. And I started talking to him, and one of the interesting things that this guy that was there that day, I said, "Do you believe in the Mandela effect?" And we began to talk about it, and he said, a lot of people come in here, and he goes, they tell me that we're in the Orion Spur now, but that we used to be in the arm of Sagittarius. That was the
constellation.
The constellation, my mind.
The Zodiac.
The constellation that we were in, and he says that he actually had a memory of that, but he couldn't remember. It was almost like it was a dream.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I thought it was so interesting that he said that, and I said, I thought that that's what it was, and that when you looked into the sky, you could see Orion, but now we're in Orion, so it's just so weird. Like and Orion Spur is so far away from the Sagittarius. It's like clear across the galaxy, isn't it?
It's
so close. I'm sitting there going like, how is that even like possible? Are we in a completely different Earth that is like not even anywhere near like what we were on before? And I'm sitting there, people at home are probably going like, wow, okay, we started off with Mother's Day, and now we're in Orion Spur in the Sagittarius arm. No. But folks, and I've never been a big zodiac believer because I know that that whatever constellation you're actually born under. When I was in college, I was such a smug, smart mouth kid, and the professor's like thinks that he's going to say something revealing, and he's like, how many of you believe in the zodiac? Because he's obviously going to shut it down, because it was an astronomy class, and they were like, well, he goes, yeah, any of you that raised your hand, you're completely wrong because you're actually born the constellation, one moved over, And so I already knew that, like I figured that out,
Mm-hmm.
And so I had raised my hand and told him, look, I already know, that that's not the case or whatever. He goes, well, then you're probably the only one in this class. But then he instantly didn't like me because he thought I was a little know-it-all, and I guess I kind of was. I was such a little jerk, and he was a little jerk too. So 2 little jerks. Obviously, he's going to win. He's a professor, but. The point is that, the whole thing to me was like, I studied the stars, and I always had a telescope since I was a young kid. I was always into the stars. You can ask my mom and dad. I mean, I was obsessed with Star Wars, Star Trek, any kind of star, anything,
Space stuff.
Yeah, like I was telling D. Doss on the BDRP interview, there's only really 2 pieces of fiction that I really enjoyed: Star Wars, any kind of star, anything, and then of course I like Lord of the Rings. But other than that, I'm not really into the whole fiction thing. But I always like those particular, just how it fit in with our world, because I always thought it was intriguing that Star Wars would say, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And I figured out at a very early age that if you're looking up and you see that star's light, whatever's going on over there already happened a long time ago. So the light you're seeing was generated like 1 million years ago. So you're going like, wow, so that did happen a long, long time ago. And I always believed that when I was looking up at certain constellations, that was where Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker were fighting, So that was me as a kid. What was that, Kat?
I said that was cute.
Well, as a kid, you daydream that, as a child. So, when this whole Mandela thing kicked off and people started talking about it, I have 2 memories of Nelson Mandela dying. And one of my buddies from downtown, of course, I'm not going to say his name about it because I want to get him on the show and actually talk to him, and we'll throw that at him when he comes on. But you actually have sat down and drank beer with this guy, and so you remember we talked. He actually believed that he pointed it out to me almost immediately. He was like, Mandela is dead again. Now that was weird to me. I remember Spock, what's his name, Leonard Nimoy dying twice. Yep. The Queen of England dying twice. I was literally at. I was asked to be quiet about this. I was actually at a restaurant here in Austin that I like to go to down in South Austin, La Posada. It's a really good place. Anybody ever wants really good carne asada, that's where you go. It's the best in the city.
Good Mexican food.
Good Mexican food. So I was down there, and there were some people, and I was watching with four people. The Queen had died, and I specifically remember watching this, and they were showing the funeral procession, and I made an off remark about, I was like, oh, the old reptile finally died, and this woman, just an American, she wasn't an English, she wasn't like, no, you horrible, English, English people talk like that. No, she was an American, and she was like, you're horrible, shut your mouth. And she said that to me because I made this loud joke. Of course, we're sitting there drinking beer and cutting up.
Having a good time.
I specifically remember us making jokes about her having lived so long, and finally she was dead. Well, I'm going about my life over the next year or two, and she's still alive. So how do you explain that? What is that? What were those memories? Now, I was with four other people, and I have talked to at least three of them. The other one, I haven't got a hold of him to even ask him about it, but three of them still live in this town with me, and they all specifically remember that incident. Okay.
Well, that's good. At least they didn't pop somewhere else.
No, because we all have these memories of that incident, of us laughing and making a joke, and that woman flipping out about it. But apparently that didn't happen because she's still alive. And so I'm going like, what is this? There are a lot of people who claim that Patrick Swayze died twice. There are people who claim John Candy died twice.
I remember Patrick Swayze dying twice because the second time when I heard about it, I'm like, wait a minute, he died. If I'm remembering correctly, I thought he had died 2 or 3 years previously.
Prior.
Yeah. Thank you. And it blew my mind. It just, that's the stuff that it totally just freaks me out to no end. And it makes you that's one thing to notice. Like, have you talked to people that, like you said, your friends, they all remember that instant. And then you'll run into somebody else, some people will have the same Mandela effect memories as you, but then other ones, they don't. I don't know. It's like we've all been jumbled up from different timelines or different worlds and put into one.
Catherine, I'm gonna ask you a favor because we are gonna have to wrap this show up because it's gonna push off into the 2-hour mark. But what I was gonna tell you, what are we doing on time?
Looking at
letting me know right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting when you start talking about timeline.
If we go over 2 hours, he'll begin to beat us
with a wet noodle.
That's okay. I totally understand.
No, but we'd like to have you on again some other time.
We will actually. I'm sorry. I gotta say this.
Yes,
I want you to come back and do a Mandela with us. And if you don't mind, like maybe you could do a little research. All of us here at the round table could do some research, and I will come up with a bunch that I've found, like the human anatomy. Just this the human anatomy, and I will tell you the globe or whatever you want to call it, if you believe in the globe or flat earth, whatever, because I know there are flat earthers out there. And so I'm not going to give an opinion about that one way or the other.
There's plenty of flat earthers all around the globe.
There's plenty of flat earthers all around the square or the globe or whatever it is you believe in. I just know that there are a lot of people who look at the map and say it looks different. And me and Armando actually think Texas looks different. Yeah. We've actually looked at it, and I was like, look, we're just staring at it, and I'm like, Mondo, does that look right to you?
It looks smaller than what it used to be.
It looks smaller. I was like, the Mandela effect ripped us off, dude. They took part of our land.
Yeah.
Where is this? And I was like, how convenient. They took the Texas and gave it to other states.
Yeah.
Anyways, all joking aside, though, it does look different. I told Mondo, did you not notice, or Sal, I'm sorry. I said, did you not notice that? And he was like, yes, it totally looks different. And so there are people out there going like, you're crazy. But you know what? I promise you, dude, if you told me that, okay, if Texas was the same, right? And you told me I had to swear on the Bible or something, if I had to go one way or the other, I would tell you it looks different to me. I'm telling you the absolute truth of what I see and what I believe, and it does not look correct. Now, my brother lived up in Michigan for 20 years, and the guy that cuts my hair, he's from Michigan. He said the same thing. My brother and him were talking at the barbershop, and they're like, Michigan looks different. The place where you go into Detroit to what city is it? Windsor? Is it Windsor? I'm trying to remember what city you go from Detroit into Canada, and they were, and of course I'm not from there. I've been through there, but they were saying that it used to be from Detroit up into that. Now it's like you go down or something
and out of the way.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
so
closer, right? It's closer than it used to be, correct?
Yeah, I mean, like,
did they see that?
You're from Michigan, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so in Detroit, okay, and I'm sure it's not somewhere you want to be very often, but if you
No,
go to
not at all.
Detroit, what is the city across there? Is it Windsor?
Oh man, let me ask my other half because I've honestly never been to Canada, and I don't. Honey, what's across from Detroit going into Canada? What is there a city across? Well, I know, but what city you're talking about the city in Canada, right? Do I sound like what was that? Ontario? Or is that what you're talking about?
Is it
Josh?
Ontario?
Like when you leave? Oh, it is Windsor. The
Windsor.
city that you leave, yeah, you got it right. He just said
It
Windsor.
is Windsor, right? Okay. Yeah, I was almost certain that it was Windsor, and if I was going to say, did it change too? Because wow. But I know that it was either north to south, and now it's south to north, or something like that. And I know that they were both talking about it, and we were at the barbershop, and they were talking about how Michigan looks different, and how, but then there's just as many people that will say, well, no, it doesn't, it looks the same to me, and then Australia looks further up than it should be. I mean, there's just South America looks way, way over to the right. It's not directly below us anymore. It's like way. So anyways, I would like to do a show, and we could just do the Mandela effect and actually have you come back on, and you give me what you got, and I'll give you what I got. And
okay,
we could actually do that because I think you were a very good guest, and I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you guys letting me come on and tell my story about my mom. It's and it really means something to me, especially from Mother's Day. I really appreciate that.
Well, we'd like to help our guests and our listeners and anybody else out there who would like to come on and speak. We don't typically have the same format as like Vic or any of those guys that have the guests or whatever, but we love to have guests on anytime, because we still do our show the way we do it, but we like to do specials and do specials.
Mix it up a little bit.
Mix it up. Yeah, it's pretty much an open forum here. The one thing I don't want to do, though, is have people just calling in on a live show or cold or whatever where you can. That's the one thing that I would probably get shut down because, people would call up and just say all kinds of crazy stuff. But other than that, I'm pretty much open to whatever. And so you coming on the show was awesome.
Yes, very much so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me.
Oh, well, we loved having you, and I hope the next time we have you on, you still have a few more stories for us. I'm fairly certain. Well, that's great. That's great because from what you told us, sounds like you come from a long line of ladies who have are quite sensitive and can pick up on things that like a lot of the average people don't really or are unable to do.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's probably why. I mean, it sounds crazy, but yeah, demons and stuff can be scary, but the Mandela effect just totally kind of terrifies me, to be honest.
I think it does because it's an uncertainty. We don't know.
Yeah.
People claiming that they go to bed and they wake up and their whole world is different. Like I've seen people. I mean, people talking about how they don't remember certain children that they have, and I mean, there's some weird stuff out there, man. I'm telling you, and of course, I got a story not too long ago from a guy that had an accident, and I told you about that. So, and I don't want to give it away because we're going to talk about it on another show, but he
Okay.
lived like 4 years of his life, and then it turned out that didn't really happen. I mean, that kind of stuff, it just it's just you get all these stories and you're just going like, what is this? And where are we? Are we in a matrix? What is going on here?
Yeah, it's really.
What's going to happen next?
Yeah,
Where are we going to be thrown to next?
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, I had an awesome time, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to doing it again.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much.
And we will have you on soon. We will have you come back on, and I definitely want to do a Mandela show. But we appreciate you being a part of the roundtable today. I would say more as you were more of a guest, but actually, when you come on the show, you're just one of us, and we're just talking.
Yeah,
you're just part of the roundtable.
You're helping us try to make sense of the world around us and all the high strangeness that seems to go on, and the average person out there is completely oblivious to it. That to me, that's the sadness in today's world for me. It's just that people are oblivious to that, and they don't care.
They reject
to ponder
it out of hand.
Yeah, and they don't care to ponder it at all.
No, and it blows my mind how they don't even see it. They don't even see it. It goes right over their head.
Or they look right at it and refuse to acknowledge what they're looking at.
Yeah.
It's like I tell my wife, those kind of people are comfortable being in the cage.
Well, it's what do you call it? Willful ignorance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of willful ignorance going on.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say something that's uncomfortable, people don't like it. And then, and I get this a lot too. I'll talk to people and, you begin to talk about the subjects of the paranormal, whatever, and then they'll get this like lazy-eyed stare.
Well, they'll laugh.
Start to, or they'll laugh, or they'll stare off into space, and their face looks like they're falling asleep, and you just want to slap them, but you can't. You're just like, you know what? I got things to do. I don't gotta, because there's people that'll talk to you like they're your friend on a day-to-day basis, and you'll be like, oh yeah, what are you doing? I said, well, actually, I just finished recording a show. Oh, you have a show? What's it about? The paranormal. Then they're like. They start like sleeping with their eyes open, and you're like, all right, you know what, dude, see you later. Why even bother asking me how my day was? Do you really care? No, you don't. You're just being a drone like everyone else.
Yep.
I get that a lot. Just people just look at you like, and you're just like, what? Obviously these people don't care whether we're in the arm of Sagittarius or the Orion Spur. They don't really care. They're happy.
They're happy living their day-to-day lives with their faces buried in their phones and
the mundane
and
life.
the TV.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, running hard on that hamster wheel. That's all it is.
The phone is that's the big escape.
The zombie maker.
That's absolutely. Yeah. I had a picture of my little cousins. They were on a softball team, and there were like 10, 12 girls on this softball team, and they had won some kind of something, and my aunt had posted it, and they were like at a pizza place or something, and they were celebrating, and it was the saddest. It was funny at first, but then it was sad.
They all had their face buried in the phone?
Excuse me?
They all had their faces buried in their phones?
Yeah, every single one of them. Like somebody snapped a picture of them sitting there together celebrating, but they were all just looking at their cell phone. Every single girl was looking down at their cell phone, and I thought, at first I chuckled, then I thought, that is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was in Little League and we won, some stuff, I remember going and doing the same thing, but we were all happy to be playing together and eating pizza and drinking too many sodas or whatever.
And talking about the stuff that kids talk about.
Kids talk about, and then getting the sugar rush and going and playing the games and all that. And we were having a blast. But these kids, all they were doing was just looking at their phone. And they were all sitting right next to each other, and every single one of them was looking at their phone.
Scary.
They were probably talking to one another, too, on the phone.
Scary.
Oh, it's a form of brainwash. It's absolutely that's what it is. I mean,
yeah. But thank you so much. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Catherine, go ahead.
You're very welcome. Oh, I was just gonna say the same thing, that it's sad and it's very scary that that they're not living their lives really, and they're kind of like zombies with their faces buried in the phone. But I appreciate you guys having me, and I look forward to coming back.
Absolutely. We'll do that again shortly. We have a lot of material that we've already covered and that we're going to be releasing. So this episode should be Happy Mother's Day episode, for everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's going to, we're going to air this one. And I believe that we're probably going to have one that's going to come right before this one. Will be the one with Chris.
Oh yeah,
So if that one's already aired, everybody.
Yeah, well, this coming weekend is not Mother's Day
It's
weekend.
not Mother's Day. Okay, so then it will be the second one with Chief will be Friday. Yeah, just kind of giving you guys a timeline of where we're at right now because we're on a different timeline. But you know,
We're having our
we're
own
in a
Mandela.
parallel timeline here, and we're
Right.
going to come back to y'all's timeline and drop this.
Yes,
So
definitely.
enjoyed talking to you. Just to clear the air too, I was planning on having told those stories on an upcoming episode. So being able to drop those stories simultaneously, having you on to tell your story was actually a real treat. So I once again thank you for coming on, everyone. Be sure and like and subscribe, leave comments.
Oh, definitely. And don't forget the email, daswolfman88@gmail.com or wolfandsal@gmail.com. Send us your story. We want to hear it. And hey, we're going to get to it as fast as we can because we want to tell your story. So with that being said, good night, good day.
Yes.
And greetings and salutations, and have a great time wherever you're at.
Whatever timeline you're in.
That too.
Good night.